Hi there. Today I'll be talking about the Blackmagic Pocket HD OG Original. I've had this camera for 2 years. I've used this camera on 5 projects. Pretty much everything I've done in the past 2 years. It's my go-to camera. It's been the A and B camera on pretty much everything I've done so far. Uh, I've built several rigs for this camera. I change my setup every time based on the needs of the project and also the time of the day. So I got a cage for this camera. Uh, I don't know what brand it is. I was personally looking for a Tilta cage a couple of years ago, but I couldn't find one. So I got this no-name half cage, or I don't know if it's a branded cage or not, but it gets the work done. I can mount multiple accessories on it. There are a few issues with this camera, as we all know. The biggest problem being the battery life. It hardly records for 20 minutes with the battery that you have in it. The Nikon style battery. I don't even remember what it's called. The EL20 battery, this one. So the first accessory I use is a battery plate. This is a Sony NPF style battery plate. The batteries are quite cheap, and this plate itself costs only $10, I guess. I also use the same battery plate with the Blackmagic Pocket 4K and the Blackmagic Cinema Camera 2.5K. You just have to get different cables, but the cables are pretty cheap. I think they're within $5 to $10 range. The second issue with this camera is the screen. It's not a flip out screen or a tilt screen, so sometimes it's really tough to work around it. So for that, I use a video monitoring system. The next accessory is this Accsoon Cine Eye. It's a video transmitter. I've been using this for the past year. Also, one accessory that I use with multiple cameras. It's quite useful with this one, mainly because this camera does not have a tilt screen or a flip out screen. So when on a gimbal, it becomes a little tough to look at the screen, so you can monitor everything from your phone or iPad. You can also mount your phone on top of the camera along with this transmitter, or you can just attach it to your gimbal. The third accessory is a mic. I'm using the Rode Video Mic Pro. This is the old one. I personally do not recommend recording sound in camera because it has pretty bad preamps, and usually I record sound separately on a Zoom recorder. At times I use the H4 and sometimes the H1 depending on where I'm filming, and it also depends on what mic I'm using. If I'm using XLR mic, then of course I go for the H4. If it's a lav or something like this mic, then the H1 gets the job done. So here you can see how the Cine Eye works with the camera. You get a bigger and brighter screen that can be adjusted however you want. There's barely any lag. Along with that, you get all the pro features. It's a lot better than the screen. If you want to keep it light, then you can use the screen. Otherwise, I personally prefer using the Cine Eye. With this setup, it's also a lot easier to go handheld. When the camera is too light, the jitters are quite obviously visible. This way, it's a lot smoother because there's a lot more weight to it. It's still not too heavy. For me, it's just the right amount. The rig for this camera changes from time to time. It depends what time of the day I'm shooting. So the second setup I use is not much different. The only difference is that instead of the mic, I use a light. It's a lot more useful in low light situations, indoors or even at night. It works a lot better if you're doing documentary style filmmaking. For narrative, I wouldn't do that, mainly because it all depends on how you want to light up your subject. There are times when I don't use a rig, simply because I'm shooting in a place where the more stuff you have on the camera, the more difficult it gets to shoot, because people will come in the way, they want to see, they'll start taking pictures, the security's gonna come and ask you to leave. So in that case, I just use this camera the way it is, nothing on it. I even avoid gimbals at times. It is a giant pain in the butt to use this camera, go handheld with this camera, simply because there is no in-body stabilization. For that, I use a couple of lenses which have in-body stabilization, or which are stabilized lenses. The first one I use is this little guy. It's the 12 to 32 Lumix G lens. It's tiny, as you can see. It's okay to use this lens during the day, simply because it's not the best low light lens. Also, this camera does not perform really well in low light unless you have a pretty wide aperture lens, something like the TD Artisan, which I use, which is 1.2. And the other lens I use, which I think is a little better than this one, is this Lumix 14 to 42. The stabilization is a little better with this lens, and also it's a little heavier, so it works a little better with the camera, just holding it in hand, because the more weight you have, the easier it gets to stabilize the shots. The lighter it gets, the more jitters you get. So at last, I'd like to talk a little bit about how this camera is still relevant after 9 years. I think this camera is even more relevant today, considering indie filmmaking is just growing. It is very difficult to find a camera which creates the real film look. The new cameras are great, but they all look quite digital. I've seen people comparing this camera with Ari, or they call it a baby Ari or little Ari. I've read online on several forums. But this camera still, again, I would say one of the best indie filmmaking cameras. It's cheap, easy to build. You can get a lot of accessories at a very low price. The biggest issue with this camera now is it's kind of hard to find. I got lucky. I got 2 in the same month, and I didn't even pay a lot for these cameras. This specific body I'm holding right now, I paid around $180 for this one, and the other one I have, I paid $200. That one came with all accessories and came in the box, but they both are in good condition. All the ports work. I got a couple of batteries when I got these cameras, and since then I've just loved this camera, and I recommend this camera to everyone. So yeah, let me know your thoughts. If you guys think this camera is still relevant in 2021, you think it's a good indie filmmaking tool, and also you can leave some suggestions if you have any accessories that should be added or can be added to this camera. If you like this video, please hit the like button, please share, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.